Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on your time zones, to our esteemed speakers and our participants. I'm Kotter, and I work as a lecturer with the School of Governance in Society in UMT. Also with the Avoidable Deaths Network, I work as the regional coordinator for Pakistan. Today's webinar is being conducted by the Center for Disaster Management and the School of Governance in Society, and it is being facilitated by CDM's international partner, the Avoidable Deaths Network. Before moving on, let me first introduce the CDM at UMT. The Center for Disaster Management, which was established in January 2020 under the domain of UMT, is the first institution of its kind in Punjab, Pakistan. In addition to its DSDM program for undergraduate students, the Center for Disaster Management also provides specialized training on disaster risk management to its local clientele. CDM scope directs supporting of the public sector, emergency services, industry, and communities through capacity building, skills development, and provision of specialized knowledge. It also involves conduction of collaborative research in disaster management. Moving on, let me introduce our esteemed guest speakers for today to our participants. Our first speaker for today will be Dr. Richard Kotter, who is a senior lecturer or assistant professor at Northumbria University at Newcastle upon Tyne, United Kingdom, and is based in the Department of Geography and Environmental Sciences in the Faculty of Engineering and Environment. Dr. Kotter is also an elected member of the Academic Board of Northumbria University and a trustee of the International Emergency Team, UK. His lecture will focus on using service design for improvements in emergency preparedness and response using cases from Pakistan. Our second speaker will be Dr. Hideyuki Shiroshita, who is an associate professor at the Graduate School and Faculty of Societal Safety Sciences, Kansai University in Japan. He's also an affiliate member of the Disaster and Development Network at Northumbria University, UK. Dr. Shiroshita has served as an advisor of disaster education to several governmental committees. Currently, he is the chairperson of Osaka Prefectorial Committee for Promoting Safety and Disaster Education. His lecture today will focus on implementation of disaster risk education for tsunami hazard in Osaka, Japan. And finally, our third speaker we have Dr. Holmes Paez, who is a full professor at the Pontificia Universidad Javeriana in Bogota, Colombia, in the Civil Engineering Department. His work focuses on disaster risk management, construction economics, engineering project management, and informality in urban settings. He will speak to us on disasters, reconstruction, and climate change in Colombia and Latin America. To maintain decorum, no questions will be taken during the lecture, and your mics will be put on mute. After every speaker's talk, we will then have a question and answer session where you may raise questions. Now let me pass on the mic to Dr. Nivedita Ray Bennett, who will provide an introduction to the Avoidable Deaths Network and the webinar poll.
Thank you very much, Shaza. Can we have my first slide on the screen, please? Okay. Hello, everyone, wherever you are in the world. My name is Nivedita Ray Bennett, and I'm one of the founding presidents of the Avoidable Deaths Network. The other president of Avoidable Deaths Network is Dr. Hideyuki Shiroshita, based in Kansai University in Japan. I'm also an associate professor of risk management at the University of Leicester School of Business. Thank you very much for joining us for this special session entitled Disaster Risk Management, Discourses from Asia and Latin America. A big thank you to our esteemed three speakers, Dr. Richard Kotter, Dr. Hideyuki Shiroshita, and Dr. Paez, for accepting our invitation. I would also like to thank University of Management and Technology for hosting ADN's special session in Pakistan. In particular, I would like to thank Dr. Ahmed Ali Gul, Director of the Center for Disaster Management, Dr. Aisha Azhar, Director, School of Governance and Society. Mr. Malik has just introduced himself from the director of the Center for Disaster Management, and Shaza Khwaja, chair for today's special session. Shaza is our Leicester graduate, so a big thank you to MUT for recruiting a Leicester graduate, and I'm sure she will make you all proud. I would also like to thank my ADN team for putting this special session together. Denise Corsell, ADN's Operation Manager, Antara Ragini, ADN's Activity Coordinator, and today we have our brand new member, David Cole, who has kindly taken on the role of Knowledge Exchange and Engagement Coordinator for the special sessions. I would also like to thank Mr. Victor Okoro, who will be joining us shortly. He's struggling to join, from Disaster Alert for supporting this special session today. And we will continue with this partnership for the subsequent sessions. So having concluded these thank yous, my job today is to introduce Avoidable Deaths Network briefly. So we can move on to the next slide, Shaza. So Avoidable Deaths Network, or ADN, is a diverse, dynamic, inclusive, and innovative global membership network of experts, practitioners, and researchers interested in avoiding deaths, human deaths from natural hazards and naturally triggered technological hazards and human-made hazards in low and middle-income countries. ADN was launched on 12th March 2019 at the 4th Summit of the Global Alliance for Disaster Risk Institutes in Kyoto University in Japan. We will be celebrating ADN's second birthday next week. So we can move on to the next slide, Shaza, thank you. So we are often misunderstood as an NGO or an INGO, international NGO. Now ADN is not an NGO. ADN is led by the universities of Leicester and Kansai, where we are based, myself and Hideyuki. University of Leicester offers a distance learning MSc program called Risk, Crisis and Disaster Management, and I am the director of this program. Shaza and Denise are our graduates. Victor is currently pursuing this program funded by the prestigious Commonwealth Commission's Distance Learning Scholarship. Kansai University offers a variety of BA and BSc in safety science. To learn more about these programs, please visit our websites. So we can move on to the next one, Shaza. Thank you. So why do we exist? ADN exists to help policymakers and practitioners to make better decisions to save lives and injuries to achieve sustainable development goals. By 2030, we want to be recognized as global leaders on avoidable deaths for impactful research, solutions, and services. So we can move on to the next one. Thank you. So what are we doing to achieve our purpose and vision? Currently, we are doing 6 interrelated activities. Number 1, we are open for collaboration for research and solutions. Our research themes are disaster education. Number 2, maternal mortality and morbidity from unsafe abortion and missed and post-abortion care complications during disasters and crises. Number 3, direct and indirect disaster deaths. Number 4, snake bites deaths during disasters and lightning deaths. Second, we are hosting conferences, webinars, and special sessions. We launched our special session on avoidable deaths on 4th December 2020 at the Gorilla Conference at Makerere University in Uganda. Today's session is our 3rd event. Next month, we will be in Hindu Kush. Last month, we were in Nigeria, and we will continue with our special sessions until December 2022. The aim of the special session is to promote creative thinking around reducing avoidable deaths. While listening to our speakers today, participants might think or take notes on how disaster education or effective reconstruction or service design can reduce disaster deaths. Third, promoting state and non-state collaboration. We are doing this wherever possible through research and enterprise activities, including capacity building sessions in our 3 focus countries, which are Bangladesh, India, and Uganda. Fourth, advocating the agenda of mainstreaming avoidable deaths. This is a long-term goal. It's a process-oriented goal. We are doing this through disaster education in Japan. Hideyuki is leading this. I'm doing this by developing tools and intervention package that can reduce maternal mortality and morbidity during disasters and crises. My test beds has been Bangladesh, and now I'm trying to upscale it in Afghanistan and other West African countries. We are raising the agenda of mainstreaming avoidable deaths through research papers, special sessions, policy briefs, and so on. During COVID-19, we started several projects with our organizational partners, such as COVID-19 repository, and this project is ongoing. COVID-19 helpline project, we did it with our Indian partners. This project was concluded last year, and we also started experimenting with the Avoidable Deaths Framework. Shaza has been part of this project. Avoidable Deaths Framework is a collaborative project of 11 institutions across 8 countries. Fifth, we publish biannual ADN newsletters and bulletins. And lastly, we are constantly bidding for grants to keep ADN moving forward. So we can move on to the next slide, Shaz, thank you. So ADN, we have a core member of 6 people that forms the core team. We have 3 hubs, as I mentioned. The 3 hubs are in India, Bangladesh, and Uganda. In India, it is hosted by Orissa State Voluntary Social Workers Association. In Bangladesh, it is hosted by Chittagong University, Dhaka University, Bangabandhu Sheikh Medical University, and Data Management Aid. And in Uganda, it is hosted by Makerere University in collaboration with the Prime Minister's Office of Uganda. We have 18 regional coordinators from 13 countries. Dr. Julian is our regional coordinator based in Colombia, and we have Shaza Khwaja based in Pakistan, and she is our regional coordinator. We have 33 organizational partners. Disaster Alert Management, MUT today are our partners. We also have partnerships with Disaster and Development Network, which is based at Northumbria University, where we have Richard from there. We have 13 world-renowned multidisciplinary advisors from 9 countries. Sorry, it's 8 countries, it's a mistake. We just recruited a new advisor, Professor Mike Patterson from University of Auckland and Technology. Auckland University and Technology, yeah, sorry. Yeah, so it's from 9 countries now. So instead of 12, it is 13 advisors from 9 countries. So we can move on to the next one, Shaza. Okay, so you can join ADN as an affiliate or organizational partner. Our affiliates and organizational partners receive our biannual newsletters and bulletins, as well as information on various knowledge exchange activities hosted and facilitated by the ADN team. They can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Organizational partners often collaborate on ADN's research projects and knowledge exchange activities, and today's session is one of those examples. We have 2 schemes called Junior Champions and Future Leader Program. Junior Champions target primary school, and Future Leader Program targets university students. If any student at MUT wants to focus their dissertation project on any of ADN's research topics, I can arrange global mentorship. Through this mentorship, we aim to improve the quality of the project, make it publishable, and in doing so, increase the chances of employability for that particular student. So if you have not joined ADN yet, I have requested Denise Corsal to post the link on the chat box of this Zoom. Please feel free to join. It will take only about less than a minute, about 30 seconds. So we can move on to the next one, Shaza. So these are some of our publications, and the publications is an ongoing thing we are constantly doing. So we have had a couple of acceptance this year, and we haven't got the DOI yet, so we haven't posted it. So we can move on to the next one. These are some of the publications which are directly talking about avoidable deaths, and we will be probably having many more this year based on some of the data collection we did on COVID-19 and the Avoidable Deaths Framework. And we can move on to the next one. Yeah, these are some of our funders for Avoidable Deaths Project. And last month, I just got this brilliant news that I have been offered an off-site visiting research fellowship at Rabdan Academy in Abu Dhabi. And this is a part funding for our Avoidable Deaths Framework project. So thank you, and I hope you will enjoy. You will join ADN if you haven't joined yet. And as I said, Denise Corsell has posted the link on how to join ADN. It's right on the chat box. If you want, you can do it now. Now, what we are doing is that, as I said, these special sessions will continue till next year, 2022. We are currently capturing the impact of our special sessions. So we will be running 2 polls. The first poll will be just after I stop talking, and the second poll will be after the last speaker, which is Dr. Julian Paez. So Denise, may I request you to run the first poll, please? Thank you very much, and thank you to everybody for listening to me, and I'm sure it will be a fascinating talk today. So thank you, guys. So please take a few seconds to take part in this poll survey. Thank you. All you have to do is just click.
Hello, everyone. I believe now on the screen you should be able to see the poll. There are 3 questions there. This is just to see what kind of knowledge you have prior to the sessions and to be able to see whether after the sessions your knowledge has been improved. So thank you very much for those who are already answering the questions. I see that 7 people have already participated. Thank you very much.
Denise, how many people did you say have participated so far?
Yeah, now we have 32% of the people who are here have already answered the questions. I think it may take a bit of time depending on whether you're using your phone, but it should work for both a phone and a laptop device. So yeah, now we have 37%, which is wonderful to see. In a minute,
need about 80%, yeah?
Yeah, so please continue, but yeah, it may take a bit of time. And then in a minute, we will also be able to share to everyone how everyone has approximately answered, but don't worry, your answers are anonymous. So we won't know who's answering which way. We've now got almost 49%, so we will give it another minute.
Denise, do you need to scroll the page or the participants can scroll it by themselves?
Yes, the participants will be able to scroll by themselves. On the right-hand side, there's a little gray bar where you can scroll down. I can see that most people have also completed the questions below. So we now have 60%, which is wonderful. Thank you. Okay, it appears now that I think the majority of us have voted. It is still at 60%, but I'm not seeing it rise anymore. So I'll give it another few seconds. Oh, 61%. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got at 64%. I think I'm going to stop now because we need to also start the sessions.
So Denise, do you want to show us the result? I think we have done that in the past. Brilliant.
Yes, are you able to see the screen now?
Yeah, and don't forget to take a screenshot.
Okay, thank you, Denise and Dr. Nivedita. We'll now begin our lectures. Just before moving on, I'd like to point out one thing, Dr. Nivedita. The university is UMT, University of Management and Technology, not MUT.
As I'm so sorry, I have done that error before as well, and I've done it again. I'm extremely sorry to your university for that error.
Yeah, we'll just move on. If we have Dr. Kotter with us, I'll share his screen. Dr. Kotter, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah.
I'll just share his screen for you.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Yeah, so maybe I start with just a sentence or two on why and how I come to this sort of topic. So as I think is sort of indicated in the slide, I'm obviously, well, I'm a German academic, been working for 20 years about that, a bit longer in the United Kingdom, in the areas of disaster management, sustainable development, international development, but also transport mobility. And I've got environmental sciences degrees, German as well, underpinning that, if you like. Service design, I actually work quite a lot on various sort of projects, smaller and larger, with colleagues in our Northumbria School of Design. So it's an area I've been exploring, and we'll see what that brings to the table. You see the acknowledgements. For the past 2.5 years, I was invited, and I am a sort of active trustee and development trustee of a UK charity, International Emergency Team UK, and I'll say just a little bit about that. And I was part of a working delegation of that charity based in the UK, but working in Asia and including at the core sort of beginning in Pakistan, on a working delegation last spring for 3 weeks, plus I was then hosted at the University of Engineering Technology in Lahore also. So it's really good to see a new university for me in the center to begin to exchange with them, and hopefully before long I can be back out there. Right, so can we go to the next slide then? Yeah, and then the idea was to say just a little bit, not very much, about design and service design. So many people have the sort of notion, the idea that design is product, which is true, but it's something necessarily sort of tangible, which is important in our area of risk reduction, safety, and disaster management. A helmet or a certain device to protect you from, say, COVID. But actually, the more interesting, at least for me, part of design is service design, which is about systems, about integration and redesign of systems from the user end, and thinking and working. So it is co-production with users, which can be an organization, the end users, a mix. And what you typically find, colleagues in the design school, in universities, for instance, or in design practice, that is an industry, they typically use a mix of methods, which we probably would know in our field from two ends, I think. One, you could probably describe as some kind of action research, commercial or non-commercial. And the other one probably you can describe as from the toolbox of what we draw on in project management, plus then areas which we are obviously familiar with in the international development disaster management world, like the log frame analysis, SWOT analysis, theories of change, and so on. So all of that is actually used in service design. Personally, I've always been more interested in processes and disasters as often quite slow and long processes than the big ticket massive events, although they're also really important, and they obviously have a lot to do with how we prepare, mitigate for them, respond to them. But I'm also very much interested in the more mundane, if you like, and that connects, I think, to avoidable deaths as well in a major way. Okay, so next slide. So this is just to familiarize or remind us of this so-called, it's a social science formula, it's a conceptual formula, but this sort of risk formula, right? And the image there is borrowed from a book of colleagues on the Himalayas. So it's kind of the area of mountainous, hazardous environments. But of course, you know, it's not really all about the hazards, it's about the exposures and the vulnerability. And if we do something about the exposure, which we may be able to do at certain points, but as you'll see in some of my examples, that is not so easy, but you can probably do more about the vulnerabilities. The two types of settings, which I'll talk about briefly in terms of case studies here, Lahore is, at least, you know, for my sort of in the UK background, the German background, is a mega city, expanding still, and has multiple risks, some of which relate to, say, traffic and fire, which I was able to travel into and talk and discuss and see on the ground with experts when I was in Pakistan last year, in partnership with the Punjab Emergency Services and their Emergency Services Academy, which is based in Lahore and then radiating out from there across the Punjab. AJK is a special sort of part, or administered by Pakistan, part of Kashmir. Now has a different setting, it has a different type of mix. In both cases here, I'm excluding terrorism or military conflict at the border. I didn't engage with that, and we didn't have any security clearance or ability to travel to these areas either. So next slide. So the charity I was invited to become part of and help to develop it is non-for-profit. It's registered for the last 4 years in the UK as a full charity. It's been in existence for various ways for about 10-15 years. It has a vision and a mission, and basically it fully aligns with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The intriguing thing is it doesn't have any overheads because it doesn't employ anyone. It does not have an office as such. No fixed costs in that way, and in our working delegation we all paid our own way in airfares and so on. It's largely powered in terms of human resources and time by people from the UK and then more internationally, increasingly, including in Pakistan, from people who are part of the professional emergency services, widely conceived, and then some academics sprinkled into that. So next slide, please. So a range of projects, I won't go into them all, and I'll focus on just some, but basically it's pro bono advice, consultancy, training, standards, policies, and so on, which our partners, particularly in Asia and including Pakistan, can work through with our advice and then see if they want to work through them, adopt them, take on our advice or not, as it may be. And then practical applied research on the ground increasingly as well. In the very broad field of urban and rural rescue, fire, medical emergency services, and some other disciplines. So very much like you would understand the UK emergency services and the whole family of emergency services, but I'm non-British, if you like, but I'm embedded in that system. Okay, further slide. So that's my first sort of example from a couple of years ago, which was a pro bono consultancy project on the ground and working with various stakeholders to see if a change could not be delivered. And that is, I think, illustrates what I mean by service design. So Lahore, at least, you know, if you go back 5 to 10 years, didn't have a main water supply network really available for the emergency services at times of emergency. So for instance, big fires and so on. So we were in our partnership with the Punjab Emergency Service and the Academy. We were asked, well, you know, what can you possibly tell us in terms of ideas to find a solution for that? And what are international ways and principles and tactics and strategy of firefighting which we could adapt suitably to an urban Lahore environment. So as usual then, analysis of situation and looking at the problem there was. So the fire appliances, it was clear, were had only a limited amount of water they were able to carry, and also they had a pump pressure system which was actually low pressure and large volumes of water, meaning that that's not ideal for firefighting increasingly in the modern age. And also very quickly your water runs out. Means if you don't, through that first intervention technique, can control or diminish the fire, you've had it. The hoses also were low pressure jets and sprays to extinguish the fire, and that's not good modern firefighting tactics and standards, including in confined spaces, but also out in the open air. So basically, from a tactical perspective, these local incident commanders from the fire services were really facing those restrictions. They didn't have the ability which modern firefighting services commanders really have, which is high pressure, low volume equipment, and then the hoses adapt to that, and then more water supply as you go on. Okay, next slide, please. So what we did then is to see what could be done to redesign and adapt then that entire system as much as can be, and then saying, look, this is what you may be able to do, this is what you could do, and that was in fact implemented and has been retrofitted now. So a different pump was developed, a dual stage firefighting pump, which can do both low and high pressure, but high pressure was not there previously. The fire appliances were redesigned in collaboration with a manufacturer out there. There's different kind of Pakistani manufacturers for fire appliances. And the pump on the fire appliances was changed. It's been retrofitted or has been retrofitted in the fleet. And the water supplies basically was also addressed because fire appliances water tankers would be established and secured, mobilized to support large incidents. In addition, then the Punjab Emergency Services were also advised and started to basically construct above ground water storage tanks with which you can replenish your water tankers, your mobile water tankers. All of that together basically gives you a better intervention possibilities strategically and tactically. Second example then, next slide. again, and this is quite established around the world, and I'm in the process of submitting an article on that, sort of review article. Emergency medical services are well established around the world, and that includes a range of types of services, but including as part of that service, not a replacement for ambulance, but as part of that, basically emergency services, motorbikes or paramedic motorbikes, depending what the level of training is you have on there and what type of equipment they're able to carry. In the Punjab, in the urban region, previously, if you go back again 5-10 years or even more recently, basically emergency medical care was difficult to receive for some groups of the population because there was a limited access by ambulances in very dense areas in the city, and also where the road network is not good and where the population density is very low as well. So going into the rural, more rural hinterlands. That also is made worse when you have major flooding, when you have other types of destruction of the communication and road networks. So what can one do? Thinking through what you know from the US, Germany, the UK, and so on. So basically we said, okay, let's see what solution we may be able to advise, and talking to stakeholders and manufacturers. Next slide, please. So basically, I'm not going to tell you the manufacturer, there's different options. There was one major international manufacturer of motorbikes, which has a factory in Lahore. We said, look, maybe what we can do is talking through in conjunction with the Punjab Emergency Services to manufacturers to say, right, can you retrofit, redesign a motorbike so it can be deployed as a paramedic or first responder motorbike, be able to carry certain types of equipment and train staff. And then the training, there's 2 stages. One, to be proficient in riding such a redesigned motorbike, which has a different weight and shift and handling, and also then, of course, being trained at least as a first responder, if not as a emergency medical responder or paramedic. So that's what we did. We donated from the charity after fundraising 10 of those. That proved, as a pilot project, that proved to be a success. It was evaluated. We did it from the start with the authorities and presented the first initial ones to the Chief Minister of the Punjab. We have a memorandum of understanding with Rescue 112. And basically the statistics, the evaluation and all of the design was good, except it had to be tweaked quite rightly, because the first initial design of the motorbike was perhaps a bit too heavy. So that got redesigned into a lighter version, which also makes it less expensive. And then the Chief Minister and his government administration basically said, yes, we'll have more of that. And it got rolled out to the major urban centers of the Punjab, and now there's about 1,000 being deployed and responding to various types of incidents, medical services being rendered. Okay, next slide then. But that was all urban, if you like. What rural settings and rural environments? The charity was founded by somebody who originally comes from Mirpur in Pakistani Kashmir, and was a response to basically the earthquake there. So very different terrains, very different context. Next slide. We have a partner on the ground, which is a rural, very rural district. Yeah. A hospital, and we've previously fundraised, we're recognized by fire aid equipment and so on for them. The population there is basically below the poverty line and doesn't have a lot of medical assistance. Next slide. We can skip earthquakes and landslides in Pakistan just as a context. So the disruptions are real. Next slide, please. And again, next slide. And we're very much in the early to middle part interim of the project evaluation of this pilot project. Next slide. So the pilot project is about seeing whether you would introduce, and we've introduced one of these motorbikes, which we donated and given to the Hope Welfare Trust to be used with midwifery or lady health workers in this part, Kotter district of very rural AJK. Next slide, and I'm nearly finished. Next slide. So you go through basically the provision, which is very low, lots of distances to major centers and major hospitals. Next slide. And you work through the usual techniques we have in our fields of problem analysis, the problem tree, which you can look at afterwards in some more depth, which are all about preventable death and increasing quality of life by producing an intervention, additional intervention on the medical emergency medical services. Next slide. But you can look through these more in detail, the problem tree and so on. So next slide, and I'm nearly there. Next slide. Yeah. No, go down. Yeah. We have partners on the ground, keep going. We have partners on the ground which we work with or want to animate to become more interested in, more involved. The evaluation, keep going, and then I'm done. The evaluation criteria have been set, are quite clear. Some challenges with the partners of monitoring and the data and recording it very well for us to fully research that through, but we're sorting that. Keep going through the slides. Keep going down, and I'm done. Just move down for the slide. And then there is a testimony from a lady health worker which fits into the SWOT analysis. And maybe Shaza can play that. But basically, it's been working quite well. It's been used for a range of interventions which would not have been possible without this motorbike integrated into the overall service run out of a very rural small hospital. Yeah, that's I think me done. Yeah, so the quality wasn't so good, but I'll give it back to the chair of the session.
Dr. Kotter, are you done with your presentation?
Yeah, no, I'm finished. I'm available for questions and so on.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Kotter. Your presentation was quite insightful, and I would like to thank you for your contribution towards improvement of emergency preparedness and response activities in both Lahore and in AJK. I'm pretty sure that your contribution has been quite useful to us as Pakistanis, and thank you again. Now, I would like to request the participants if they have any questions for Dr. Kotter. So you can please raise your question. Anyone who has any questions? Dr. Ahmed, maybe you would like to ask something?
Oh, I just thank you for the opportunity. I just have a general comment for Dr. Kotter. It was a wonderful presentation, and I really appreciate the wonderful work that you have done in the past in my city. And it'll be my absolute pleasure if you are in town next time. We'd love to host you at UMT, and also if we of course have to wait till the travel opens up after this pandemic eases up. So looking forward to that opportunity, definitely.
Definitely, Noble. We were meant to come out this spring again, but due to COVID, that's not possible. It'll be next year. But we'll definitely pay a visit and talk with you and your students and so on. What we're currently working on as the midterm project, and I've got master students working on that, and myself, is to this motorbike stuff is just a small part of what we would like to develop and research and see if we can get the funding somehow for that, of an integrated emergency preparedness and response center in AJK, modeled on somehow but adapted on a community fire station in the UK, where all of the different services are co-integrated
There
and
are
using
a lot of different aspects of what you said. It's really wonderful that the beautiful part is that the first initial pilot project is something which was funded by your charitable organization, and then the government saw that it actually worked, and then it was the sort of a solution that could actually be scaled up for a country like Pakistan. It didn't require a lot of cost, and that's the beauty of it. And that's where I see a lot of scalability in the future. I expect that it's the sort of a thing which will be replicated in different parts of the country.
That's very much a philosophy, because we're a more small charity. Okay, there's lots of diaspora Pakistani and so on in the UK, but funds will be limited, and that's not sustainable. So really, what we would like to do is do a proper pilot project and then have a proper evaluation and say who else might want to, in a small or bigger way, want to replicate that and own it and take it away. That's sort of the idea in all of these ways. As a broker of ideas, of putting some priming in, bringing the research in, and then say, look, it's yours. It's always been yours. You drive it, you own it, and ultimately it's the authorities who have to, make sure it's the right service and gets authorized and so on.
Actually seen these motorbikes doing a great job in saving lives, and I've actually seen that happen on the road. So the next time I see, I'd be sure to think of you and thank you again for this wonderful idea.
Smashing. Thank you.
Richard, I have a question. So this motorbikes is in a way quite empowering for women. So two things: who is supplying these motorbikes, number one, who is sponsoring it, and number two, is your pilot project also teaching women to ride a motorbike, or you are picking girls who already know how to ride a motorbike? So where are you? Tell us a little bit more on that.
Yeah, very good question. So let me go back first to Lahore on that one. So the first 10 we fundraised and donated. And because we were working already, we have a memorandum of understanding right up to the Director General of the Punjab Emergency Services, Rescue 112. We could say, look, we will only do it if you do training up to the high standards and the professional standards for the people who ride it. And there's two types there. The manufacturer trains them on a simulator, a motorbike simulator, and then they do the part of their education at the Emergency Services Academy. They have to pass a riding test, and I've been on the training and the passing out ceremonies as well, and they have to drive over ladders and so on. So and there's different specialisms, if you like, of rescue personnel and emergency service responders, some of which will end up going into the paramedic ambulance sort of stream, and some of those will go on to the bikes. But it's quite a sought after profession, if you like. So that's one. So that training then is done in a partnership and licensed and authorized between the manufacturer and the professional emergency services, and integrated into the training and the protocols and the evaluation and examination and so on. In this pilot in AJK, what we also said, look, training has to be part of it, and there needs to be two types of training. The lady health visitors, of course, are already trained up to sort of paramedic standard. And they, at the end of 2017, the, well, I'll call it regional government, regularized them. Previously, it was a federally administered program, so they're fully part of that system, the health services in that part of Pakistan, or administered by Pakistan. And secondly, they already had one or two people who could ride them, but we said, look, part of the deal is, and we did the deal with the Director General of the Punjab Emergency Services, which through Jhelum, and we had people on the ground who said, yes, we'll also provide training here if necessary, or we'll have the people come to the academy in Lahore. They will get actually trained to safely ride. And the other intervention we insisted on, including in Lahore, including when we were back there in spring last year, we said, look, you know, these guys need helmets. You can't ride, for instance, in Lahore, you can't ride in that environment without helmets. Please make sure they have helmets. The challenge is that when people are in the first, as apprentice, if you like, for that profession of the emergency services in Lahore, they have to pay for their own equipment. Right? They don't get a salary, they have to pay their own equipment. So there's social inequity barriers which should be addressed. But yes, so the safety culture and safety provisions have to be there. We particularly liked the working with maternity and health workers and women. In Lahore now you have women riders. You have a lot of emergency services systems, females one, firefighters now as well. And they've been trained to ride the bikes, but in Lahore so far they've not been deployed on the bikes for cultural reasons. Also, the other cultural barrier could be that, and I've seen it, and you know, we're outsiders if you like. If you have a female patient in Lahore, the cultural practice apparently still prevents a female emergency services personnel responding to a male incident and vice versa, which obviously is a barrier for avoiding deaths in certain critical circumstances. Here, what we try to do in this pilot project, say, look, it's not just about critical incidents, it's actually giving this community, including the earthquake affected community in the very rural part out from Mirpur and in Kotli, they don't have much services, including medical services or midwifery, anything like that. So it's also more about the mundane, which also can lead to complications and deterioration of health conditions, and potentially with pregnancies and so on, blood pressure, IV and so on, that can become critical. And then it's too late. So why don't we have a service add-on for these people to actually increase their quality of life from a health medical perspective, at least, and also address critical instances where the ambulance just can't get there. Response times for this motorbike, the pilot one, the average one has been 9 minutes, which is not bad for a rural environment. In Lahore, it's now about 5 minutes. Which gets independently monitored and so on. So, you know, it's redesigning, retrofitting it, and having different other objectives added on to that, for which you needed different systems design and different staff and so on. And what you can do about gender equality and promoting jobs and creating new jobs, we're trying, but with one bike so far, of course. Yeah. But we're talking to partners to have couple more partners, maybe then replicating that, and maybe then again the government stepping in, or some international funder saying, yes, that's a good idea for this underserviced area of Pakistan and these particular rural areas. That's the hope, that's the idea, that's where we're working towards. And then we can exit, if you like, you know. Yeah.
Dr. Kotter, thank you for the questions and the comments. And I think we'll move on now to our next speaker, Dr. Hideyuki. Dr. Hideyuki, I've made you co-host, so you can share your own screen.
Okay, thank you very much. Share my screen. Can you see my screen now? Okay. No? Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So yes, good morning and good afternoon and good evening. My name is Hideyuki Shiroshita. I am the president of ADN, as Nibedita already mentioned. I am also working at Kansai University in Japan. It is my great honor to be invited to this webinar organized by University of Management and Technology today. Thank you very much for the group from the University of Management and Technology. Today, I would like to briefly introduce our DLR education project in Osaka in Japan. Okay. Let me start sharing the common understanding of disaster education. So I am not familiar with the situation in Pakistan, but in Japan, because of the image of school education, most people think DLR education is knowledge transmission from the expert on disaster risk reduction to lay people. All schools in Japan have to follow the government regulation, that is course of study. Thus, school education is very rigid. However, a Brazilian educator, Paulo Freire, criticized this type of education in his book entitled Pedagogy of the Oppressed. He said one cannot expect a positive result from an educational program which failed to respect particular view of the world held by the people. So in Japan, it is questionable that school teachers respect the children's view of the world. So what disaster education should be explored? So Freire defined this type of education as a banking model. He explained it as instead of communicating, the teacher issued communicates and makes deposit, which the student patiently receive, memorize, and repeat. It is one-way knowledge transmission, I think. So the banking model is, one-way knowledge transmission. So the problem of banking model of education can be explained from two perspectives. From pedagogical perspective, the banking model leads children oppressed, as Freire already mentioned. And from DRR perspective, it encounters black swans. Because of time constraint, let me explain more about black swans only. Okay. So the idea of black swans is widely recognized by the Taleb's book. It describes unimaginable events such as 2011 Fukushima triple disaster. It should be noted that after Fukushima disaster, experts on DRR also described the event as an unimaginable or black swan. So my point is, even the experts on DRR, they use unimaginable events to describe the Fukushima triple disaster or black swan to describe the disaster. To prepare for future disaster, well, it is good if we find black swans in advance. However, logically, it is impossible to find as it is black swan. If we know it in advance, it is not black swan. Instead, it should be avoided that the situation was something unexpected for some people and something expected for others. So this kind of situation we should avoid. So in other words, it is important to assure the situation that after a certain bad event, like Fukushima 2011, all stakeholders fully understand as the event as unexpected or black swan. So we should ensure this kind of situation. So the problem of after Fukushima is not all stakeholders agree with the understanding of the event as a black swan. So some people still they are not happy with describing the event as black swan. So because some people had recognized the risk before Fukushima happened. So some people already pointed out something happened maybe in the future before the 2011 earthquake. Okay. So let me use the chart to explain the problem of the banking model of education more. So this is the situation before education. There are two groups of people. One is adults, experts, and teachers. This is in the left-hand side. So they relatively have scientific knowledge. So they use the scientific knowledge to expect future disaster. So the other one is, the children, lay people, students. So they relatively have indigenous knowledge. So they use this kind of knowledge to expect future disaster. If we implement the banking model of education here, what will happen? So under the banking model of education, adults, experts, and teachers transmit their scientific knowledge, and the children, layperson, and students receive it. So this is banking model of education. So then lay people rely on scientific knowledge and gradually lose their indigenous knowledge as they are evaluated by how much scientific knowledge they have. For example, in Japan, school education students are evaluated by how much scientific or knowledge which are taught by teacher they have. So this kind of evaluation we have. So this is why if teachers start to teach something, then students try to catch all the knowledge from teachers, and they start to lose the knowledge or idea which they have. So this is the situation. So the risks, the possibility of meeting black swan in the future as science is not perfect. So this slide is the possibility of meeting black swans in the future as science is not perfect. So all people just use scientific knowledge only. I think this is very problematic situation. So in order to avoid this situation, the way of sharing both scientific and indigenous knowledge is needed as disaster education. So I believe that co-learning is one of the solutions to this problem. So co-learning exists the availability of i.e. reduce the possibility of meeting black swans. Okay. So moreover, from the banking model of education, we learn not only knowledge given, but also the way of learning itself. So I mean, most people become to understand education is knowledge transmission. So we should avoid this kind of understanding. So in light of current banking model of education, the arrow from right to left is lacking to realize co-learning. So based on this rationale, our group doing disaster education project in Osaka. So from now on, I would like to explain the project. So let me explain the project school first. The project school is located in the city of Izumi-Ōtsu in Osaka Prefecture. It is in the middle part of Osaka Prefecture. So target age group is 5th grade. This means from 10 to 11 years old pupils. We started, the disaster education program in 2013, so 8 years ago. So we are running program every year. These include, making real video, organizing evacuation, mock drill, drawing real posters for foreign people. Let me explain more about our achievement. So this, for example, in 2015, the pupils were making a DRR video that explains the tsunami risk they face and tsunami DRR to the community members. They showed their video at the shopping mall and the city hall as well. as shown picture. And in 2016, they were organizing an evacuation mock drill for the school. So the children, the pupils organized the mock drill. They observed the drill carefully and write a report about how to improve the drill and handed it to the principal teacher as well. And 2018, so they were drawing DRM posters for foreign people as the city is close to Kansai International Airport. This means they have lots of foreign people in the city. So they did interviews with various people in the city and made posters and distributed to the facility in the city. So after drawing posters, they distribute their poster to the city hotel and the city hall as well. So these are the example of the poster. So maybe some of you have a question, why are they, so hard to, study about, disaster or study about, tsunami risk? So they run, the risk to the city, such as large tsunami from the lecture. So at first I gave, I gave a lecture about, tsunami risk, and then, people start to have interest in, tsunami risk and how to reduce it. And then also, they learned one more important thing. So this, table shows the damage estimation by the Osaka prefectural government. So this, damage estimation calculated by Osaka prefectural government. So when unexpected future tsunami, that is Nankai trough earthquake tsunami, strikes in the city, to the city, there is a possibility that more than 2,000 people died by the tsunami. So this is, the fact. However, there is, another estimation from the government. This is also, governmental estimation about tsunami. So no one dies, even the same tsunami strike. No one dies. So what's the difference between this table and this table? Actually, this is, tsunami awareness. So if the residents evacuate right after the earthquake, all people can survive because they have enough time to evacuate. So the children learn, this fact as well, and they understand that they can change the future. This is a very important point. So they, believe, oh, they can change the future. So the pupils try to ensure the evacuation from the tsunami for a long time. And this year, they developed Tsunami AR to teach expected tsunami risk to the community members. So let me show a few examples which the children made. So this is, Tsunami AR which children made. Actually, this is, the screenshot of the iPad. So if you go to the site, then, you can see the both, Tsunami AR and, background from the camera. And this is another, example of Tsunami AR. This is also made by school children. So they use, tsunami hazard map and they learn, how much tsunami will come, and then they kind of tsunami AR. So after developing the tsunami AR, they went to the site and demonstrate their AR to the people. So on 4th December 2020, pupils visit 12 sites to demonstrate their AR to the community members. So these pictures were taken on the day of the demonstration. And the children asked pedestrians to use their AR to run tsunami risk. At that time, they also asked them to answer the questionnaire. So from now on, I will show the result of the questionnaire. Firstly, I will show the result of did you run the risk of tsunami. by the AR, So this is very positive. 96.6% respondents evaluated are positive. And the second result is also important. So the second question is, did you know the Hamas disaster education? So more than half of the respondents know the Hamas education program before last year. So this can be understood as the impact of the education program lasts a long time. So this is an important point, I think. And the third question is, most of the respondents agree with that Hama keeps disaster education for their pupils. So that disaster education is received very positively. And then I did another questionnaire for the pupils as well. So this is, result from pupils. So this is self-evaluation of the tsunami AR. So they gave STAN evaluation to them. So, but overall, they evaluate the tsunami AR positively. And this one is the next question. So, do you agree that Hama, the fifth grade pupil, run the other? The same question to the community member. So most the pupils agree with that Hama keeps disaster education. So the same result we get. Okay. This is my last slide. So the conclusion. So from the project, it can be said that even the fifth grade pupils can teach disaster risk reduction to others or tsunami risk to others. So both community members and the pupils evaluate the education program highly positive, and the impact of the education program on the community seems long-lasting, as more than half of the community members recognize the program before 2020. So lastly, I would like to emphasize this point. So the important thing is not content of the program, but providing a chance to teach something to others for pupils. This is very important point, I think. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hideyuki. Thank you for sharing your work with us. Working at the community level, and I think starting with young students not only helps create awareness through disaster education, but I believe it's also quite useful in training these young minds to further think in terms of disaster risk reduction as they grow up. And I think your work also further exemplifies Japan's leading contribution to disaster management. I hope one day we can start teaching at the school level and at university level. We can start training students just like Japan. Thank you for your presentation. And now I would ask the participants to share any questions or comments that they might have. I think Dr. Ahmed might be interested in commenting on this since his work is a bit similar in simulation training. So maybe he would like to say a few words.
That's really wonderful work, Dr. Hideyuki-san. I just had a question because in Pakistan we really have a problem where a lot of the areas, because of the Indus River and its eastern tributaries having frequent flooding. So I would like to somehow have some key takeaways where we could have similar education and similar sort of application of disaster education for school children, where they're trying to apply or trying to sort of give flood risk-based information to locals. And while you were giving this presentation, I think the best or sort of the easiest and also the low-cost way that I could think of, or the thing was that I saw in Japan, we have tsunami markers and flood markers placed in prominent places. And I really think that is one way in which we can create some more awareness in the areas which are more vulnerable to floods and which experience frequent flooding. And we could have some sort of because I think these tech-based interventions are really fascinating. They're really exciting as well. But maybe considering the challenges, particularly for our side of the globe, we would be having we would be needing some interventions which are easy to replicate, which are low cost, and which would be easily spread across various situations and various regions.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I totally agree with you. The opinion. So yeah, in the last slide, I emphasize that the important thing is not the content itself of the program.
Definitely.
So but providing chance to teach something to others for pupils. So yeah, my point is that. So for example, if we put tsunami level or something on the Reconnect 4, I think yeah. Not expert or a teacher or adult do that. Instead, we should give this task to the children. Then
Absolutely.
we can involve people. I think this kind of approach is quite important. Yeah, just foster the how to say attitude to tackle with disaster. So yeah, so this is my point. So yeah, how can we involve as many as people in disaster risk reduction activities.
You're making those school children champions of disaster risk education in their communities, and that's really wonderful.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Hideyuki, Sheza, is that all right, if I may? Can I?
Yes.
Thank you. Hideyuki, I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Number one is, working with our ADN junior champions.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a kid. It's not easy to work with kids here. And you're working with a bunch of kids. And I'm assuming they are in the age range of what, 7 to 11 or 7 to 12. So it's a fantastic concept of Paulo Freire that you are using, the banking model and the core learning and the critical pedagogy. But as a teacher, as a mom, I'm interested to know what are the challenges and opportunities. Of course, the opportunities you have harnessed, but what are the challenges of working with young kids, number one. And number two, I think, which I have to echo and agree with Dr. Gould, that in our low and middle income countries, we haven't gone that far yet to provide kids with iPads, hi-fi, mobile phones. So, but one thing is clear, this digital generation, including my kids, these kids are very good with techno stuff, okay? So what is it called? Tech-based intervention. Kids just love it. By the age of 30, I think you are a veteran in that digital world. So these kids are the main, they have that creative mind. They are able to absorb it faster than any adult can. So do you think using that device, that tool of AR and laptop and iPad somehow attracted and it facilitated your process of promoting co-learning, promoting what else can I say, partnership with these children? Would that have been same if you had to use a non-traditional device, maybe more using questionnaires, manually, papers, things like that? What do you think? Is it that techno-based intervention has facilitated your partnership with our ADN junior champions, or it's something else about the Japanese kids on its own, which are very different than the other parts of the world? So I just want to get a much more critical opinion about your research project, which would be fantastic. So over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So as for the first question, the challenging challenge of working with children. Actually, I never felt any challenge with working with children, but working with school, sometimes I feel the difficulty. Actually, so to be honest, school teachers, they have very how to say, they like banking model of education, so they want to they want me to teach the correct answer of the disaster risk reduction or tsunami risk, something like like this, So yeah, actually, teacher expect me to teach something correct answer or right thing to the children. So yeah, actually, it is very hard to change, teachers' idea on the disaster risk reduction. So this is, my answer to the first question. Then the second question is, yeah, actually, I'm, I use, digital tools like, iPads and then, laptop, and then sometimes, now we are using Zoom as well. So yeah, I think, yeah, I, I don't think, this kind of digital tool is essential thing for disaster risk education. Actually, last year, not last year, the 2 years ago, we, ask the pupils just to draw, the posters in, both Japanese and English. This help, the foreign people learn, how to evacuate from, tsunami. And then 3 or 4 years ago, we just, write, newspaper type of disaster information we made, and we distribute disaster, tsunami newspaper or something like that. And also some, I think it was 2015, we just, did mock drill, but we let children organize mock drill. So yeah, without digital tool, still we can do lots of things for disaster risk reduction, I believe.
This is really interesting. Very good, very good. So one more question, Hideyuki. So what motivates children to take part in your project? Do they boss you? Because my daughter is always bossing me around. Do this, do that, yeah. So what do the kids do? How do they behave? What motivates them to take part in your project?
Actually, because at first I explain, the, background of the project, and then I always, teach them. So you are, how to say, the achievement will be distributed to the city, to the community, not inside school, So this, how to say, give very, high motivation to the pupils, I think, So yeah, usually pupils, they say, oh, we are doing for the, not, the school, not for ourselves, for the community member as well. So, this kind of, how to say, and in reality, so after the, project, we go to the city office and then, ask them to put the poster, or sometimes we ask them to, show the video on, in the city hall. So yeah, adult help to, realize this kind of, chance. But yeah, but I think this helps, yeah, to give, motivation to study about disaster or tsunami risk, I think.
Thank you very much, Hideyuki.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comments and the questions. And I would just like to say that Dr. Hideyuki, just now that you mentioned that the Japanese students, they do this because they derive their motivation from the fact that they're giving back to the community, they're helping their community. I really hope that other students and other children all over the world can also have this kind of attitude so that they can work for their community and not just for their personal gain.
Yeah.
So thank you. And I think I'd like to move on now to Dr. Julian Paez's presentation.
Thank you. I can share my screen.
Yes, sure. If you'd like to share your screen, otherwise I can do it for you, whichever is more convenient.
Thank you.
Should I make you co-host or should I just share the screen for you?
Yes, but I cannot share my screen right now.
Yeah, because you're not a co-host. Do you want me to make you a co-host or I can share the screen for you?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sasha. Hello. Thanks to ADM for this invitation. I hope that from this presentation, I can find friends all over the world on the idea of avoiding disasters. So what I'm going to tell you is related to disasters, reconstruction, and climate change in Colombia and Latin America. My name is Holmes Julian, like Sherlock Holmes in English, and you can use my email for contacting me in the Javeriana University, which is located in the capital of Colombia, Bogota. First, I would like to say that this presentation is related to a very special project. Thanks to this research project, I can tell you a little about the context of disaster in this part of the world. Next one, please. Next one. IDRC of Canada have found a project so-called ADAPTO, which means climate change adaptation in informal setting, understanding and reinforcing bottom-up initiatives in Latin America and the Caribbean. This project is directed by the Universidad de Montreal and several universities in Latin America. Universidad del Biobío of Chile, Universidad del Valle and Javeriana from Colombia, Universidad Marta Abreu of Cuba, and a foundation called Antioquia Presente, also located in Colombia. This group of universities have been developing research for 3 years to understand how to deal with climate change from informal settlements. So this research focuses on how to deal with climate change and some of its main effects. For this purpose, we have studied several cases in Latin America. I am personally directing a case located in Colombia. Next one, please. So to understand the issue of disasters and constructions in Colombia, it is important to focus on identifying adaptation strategy developed by local leaders in informal settings from small to medium-sized cities. This is because it is important to note that the degree of informality in Latin America, whether in construction or in the economy in general, it is significant. All of you should know that the effects of climate change are being suffered in all parts of the world, and in the following years, as predicted by Bill Gates a few weeks ago, they are catastrophic. So Colombia is not an exception to this terrible situation. Additionally to this, there are high levels of poverty that interact with climate change. In this scenario, it is important to note that there is a potential to scale action taken from the bottom up, that is from the territories to the institutions, to increase the impacts on disasters. Furthermore, transfer between such varied contexts, even within Latin American countries, is central. Finally, it is not possible to conceive a sustainable effect if the institutions that are related to disaster are not affected. The next one, please. In the Adaptive Research Project, we have found that a way of working between the universities and the communities is very effective in understanding how disasters occur due to climate change and how to deal with them. You can see in this graph how the different universities interact with the communities and achieve both research and real impact in these territories. Next one. However, some paradoxes that have prompted our research remains a matter to understand. For instance, whereas informal settlements in the region are typically vulnerable to world risks and climate change, they are also effective incubators of bottom-up informal driven mechanisms of adaptation. The next one. And in the other hand, the paradox about these strategies are very often initiated and led by women, who constitute a particular vulnerable group, but who played a crucial role in building the social fabric that made such adaptation possible. The next one. So in Latin America and in Colombia, in particular, the question remained open about what is the role of different stakeholders in disaster risk reduction in the face of climate change. Which approach do they adopt to achieve resilience? Is there a consensus? Do bottom-up initiatives have any influence on local policy or municipal budgets? Next one. To answer the previous three questions, it's important to advance in identify the best ideas and creative solution depends on the academia. The best bottom-up initiatives, match them, assess their impact, facilitate sub exchange of lessons learned. Next one. Okay, to represent what happened with disaster and reconstruction in Latin America and in Colombia in particular, I am going to explain through an example. This is the case in South America, Colombia, and within this country, in the region known as Antioquia. Next one. More precisely, this case is located in a town called Salgar. So that they can locate it in the northwest of Antioquia or 2 hours by car from a better known city that is Medellin. The next one. So Salgar is a wonderful town. It's a wonderful town due to its nature, its weather, its people, approximately 20,000 inhabitants. Most people depend on the growing of coffee. Like many peoples, it had been affected by the progressive changes that the climate had, which can be the product of climate change or simply the variation on the climate. The town is also greatly affected by the variation in international coffee prices and the condition of violence that it mainly affect the rural areas of Colombia. Additionally, the climate and how people have settled in the territories can cause considerable disasters. The next one, please. So this happened in 2015. This was the year when a mud avalanche occurred due to a season of intense rains that damaged a considerable part of the buildings in Salgar, and unfortunately, approximately 100 people died. Normally in Colombia, this type of disaster occurs with some frequency each year, with the occurrence of the two normal rainy seasons in the country. So this is an example of what happens very frequently in this part of the world. Next one. This type of disasters occur because the towns have historically been built very close to the rivers, exposing them to the risks of everything related to changes in the physical behavior of the rivers. For instance, here you can see a map. In the red zones, you can see how people still live in these risk areas even after the 2015 disaster. So disasters of this kind can happen again and again. Since people live in these areas and on the other hand, government do not have the capacity to understand and then act to this problem. Next one, please. Based on this example, we can say that the frequency and intensity of weather-related disasters have increased in the mountain region of South America. This disaster caused significant economic losses and death. Small and medium-sized cities are particularly vulnerable to avalanche and sudden flows. Among the most vulnerable groups are women, who in most cases suffer the worst effects and find it more difficult to recover. However, this is often a considerable local resiliency capacity based on social structures and networks frequently led by women. The next one, please. Everything I have said is to represent what is in danger in any town in this part of the world. Here I show some photos taken by the project developed by the Geophysical Institute of the Javeriana University, the next one. All these photos showed not only buildings, but also people who live there, who are constantly exposed to dangers caused by the weather, but which are strongly related to the way in which we have to populate the territory and the capacity to our country to face these risks. The next one. And the next one, please. On the other hand, we can see on some occasion, and this is the case of Salgar, that there is a kind of coincidence and the towns can be rebuilt in relatively short times. This is not general the case in Colombia, where reconstruction projects generally do not complete the planned deadline and times. The next one, please. But in this case, efficient reconstruction could be done. As I already said, because the deadline and the planned time were complete, it will be very important for those who become interested in how the reconstruction can be done properly. This is the case for a good example here in Colombia and in Latin America. The next one, please. In this case, also Salgar, it can be seen that results show that the local economic activity play a significant role in the recovery process. Second, the reinterpretation of women's role in reconstruction initiatives. This is because I think that, as in many parts of the world, the role of women in this type of disaster should be researched and highlighted. Third, vulnerabilities have been reduced by improvements in early warning systems. And finally, the role that female leaders typically play during and after natural disasters. For example, women's capacity to overcome the barriers of the historical vulnerability. The next one. Here are some points to discuss. The bottom-up initiatives and organization have little or no representation in political decision-making. Women play a significant role in water provision, urban space definition and management, and waste collection. Significant gap exists prevails between formally sanctioned plans and broadly informal settings. Next one, please. Women definitely play a significant role of bottom-up disaster risk reduction initiatives in the face of climate change, yet they are poorly represented in informal institutions and plans, almost in this part of the world. Significant tension in the use of water resources exists in these areas where local decision makers face significant changes in implementation. The next one. And finally, fragmentation between government and communities prevails. And on the other hand, local universities play a crucial role in linking bottom-up local initiatives and resources to formal plans and policies. The next one. I would like to leave you two messages about this experience. One theoretical, the reality is great synergy between local stakeholders and politicians and decision makers. One practical, Despite awareness about climate change and resiliency agenda based on bottom-up initiatives and local governance, is still difficult to implement in informal settlement. And finally, there are three opportunities in this part of the world. The potential role of a university in bridging the gap between local communities and formal institutions, the inclusion of local female residents in active decision-making at the municipal and government levels. These results can create a more integrated resilience agenda at the municipal level, capable of integrated value and local resources. The next one. The next one, please. Thanks for your attention. These are my email and website in case you want to contact me. To say goodbye for this presentation, remember that everything presented has been thanks to the research project note as ADAPT. Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question to Dr. Julian?
I'm sorry, I was speaking, but I think I was on mute. Can I just say a few words, and yeah, I'll just let you speak after that. I was just saying that thank you, Dr. Paez, for your interesting and expert presentation. And I believe indeed the role of any marginalized community, including women, is quite important to bring about positive and necessary change in disaster risk management, using approaches and resources at the community level. Although, as you also mentioned, practically speaking, most vulnerable groups are almost always left out of the decision-making process, which creates a barrier in reducing of their vulnerabilities and enhancement of their capacities. The issue of leaving out lay people and marginalized communities is also quite similar in Pakistan. So thank you for your presentations. And now I would like to invite the participants to ask any questions that they might have. I think Dr. Nivedita wanted to speak.
Thank you, Sej.
Thank you, Julian. My question is that in Salgar, so Salgar, the setup that you studied is an informal setup, and in your presentation you emphasized repeatedly about the role of women. So my question is, so in that particular informal setup, did you have a large number of women-headed households? Is that because of that you saw that the women were playing a key role, or what was the reason you think that women played a key role, or women are likely to play a key role? I'm not very sure which one. Is it the played or they are likely to play, and why?
Oh, okay, thank you, Nivedita, for your question. It's an interesting issue. Yeah, in the Adapter project, we identified that the women played a real role in the reconstruction of the town. This is because maybe the women have the social fabric to locate in a good way the resources that come to the town, to the reconstruction. Also, women have the possibility to share with other women in the towns these resources, and the men had other roles in Colombia, for instance. Have the role of the words and to bring the resources to the home, but the women had the capacity to share the resources between them.
I think we have a question from Dr. Ahmed.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you so much, Azad. Thank you so much, Dr. Paez. It was a wonderful presentation and really important lessons from Salgar. For me, just for the benefit of myself and for the participants, some of them are my students who I was teaching in the previous semester from public administration, students from city and regional planning. A lot of them are women, and I would be really thankful if you could explain for considering Pakistan and our local context. How can we make sure we can involve more women in disaster reconstruction and risk mitigation efforts, and also possibly in the planning phase?
Yes, yes, of course. In this case, this is a wonderful example how the women's can play a central role in a reconstruction or in disaster in general turn. So I don't know it is exactly the context in Latin America, but I can say that, for instance, historically here in Colombia, we have a situation of violence because the traffic of drugs and something like that. So we have a history of almost 50 years of work within the country. So women play a crucial role because maybe the men's are completely fully in sharing resources in this world, but the women have the capacity. We have two publications in international journals about them, so we can share you to show in more detail that situation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your request.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions for Dr. Paez? I think not. Just before, thank you, Dr. Paez, again for the question and answer session. But just before we end, I would like to say that for Dr. Shiroshita, we have a question from Mr. Muhammad Faiz Shah. He was unable to ask in the Q&A session with Dr. Hideyuki. So maybe he would like to ask his question now.
Thank you, Shaja, for giving me this opportunity. Hideyuki sensei, domo arigatou gozaimasu. Ii happyo deshita. My question regarding it is very interesting to see the table that you have shown regarding the time management. If tsunami hits during this time, the casualty will be more than 2,000. In another time, it will be 0. So as you mentioned, Higashi Nihon Daishin, you did not mention that you made Fukushima 2011, so I was a little bit confused, but I trust that you are mentioning Higashi Nihon Daishin Sai. So that time, the time of the tsunami was school time, but evacuation was not successful. So the casualty came from the tsunami itself. So how you relate that experience in your project? That's my first question. And second one, as you mentioned about the indigenous knowledge and Japanese disaster management system, especially in Osaka or Kansai area. So you have the story Inamura no Hi. So it's the best lesson you have in that area. But how you are interacting or involving the community-based organizations like the Machijikuri Kyubukai, Chonai Kai. So that part I want to ask you. Thank you, Sensei.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much for your question to my presentation. The first question, for the first question, yes. Sorry. Actually, that how to say damage estimation is for future tsunami. That is Nankai Trough, future earthquake. And then as for the time, because of the location of the school in Izumi Otsu, it's has enough distance from the how to say the trough, so the earthquake fault. So so it usually takes 90 minutes at least. They have 1 hour to evacuate after the earthquake. So this is why the time is no problem for that Izumi city. But yeah, you are right. Like Wakayama Prefecture, I have another the project site. This is focusing on the not school but the community. So the risk is more higher than Izumi Otsu because they have only 15 minutes to evacuate from the tsunami. So yeah, in that case, it's very difficult to how to say to do this kind of the project. I think because the evacuation, the quick evacuation is the most important thing. This is a message to them. So yeah. So the first question is that yes, they have enough time to evacuate. This is my answer to the first question. The second question is yes, it's very difficult to work together. So I have several project sites, but yeah, several projects. One project site is just for school, and the other one is just for community. So very difficult to mix these two entities. I don't know why, but I think one thing is involving community is difficult because of the time, because school time is the daytime, so the only elder people can help to school education, but younger generation, because they have to go to work, so very difficult. Even we send the invitation, but response is quite low. So yeah, yeah, you are right. So involving community is quite difficult. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sensei.
Thank you, Dr. Hideyuki. And before we run our second poll and end the webinar, does anyone from the participants have any more questions for any of our speakers? Okay, so I think we don't have any more questions. No. Denise, would you like to now run the second poll? Okay, wait 1 second. We do have a question. Rami, maybe you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Rami, do you want to ask your question? I don't know why she's not. Okay, I don't know why. I'm not sure why Ramin is not. Okay, she just sent in her question. She's asking how much % emergency drills help in this kind of situation. I think she wants to ask this question from Dr. Hideyuki.
Yep.
How much % emergency drill help this kind of situation? This kind of country. I'm not sure, what in this kind of situation means, but yeah, I believe, the emergency door, still, help many people, if I think, the most, how to say, the main problem regarding emergency door is very low rate of participation rate is quite low in Japan. So this is the main the issue regarding the emergency drill. So if people attend the drill, then people can learn lots of things from the drill. But the main point is not many people join the drill. I think this is the main issue regarding the drill.
Maybe I can add something from what I've seen, when observing and commenting on the education for professionals and then the volunteer programs in the Punjab regarding flooding and water rescue. So obviously you have a formal process where different kind of institutions have statutory obligations. This would be, for instance, in the Punjab, the provincial state Disaster Management Authority, And then you have a process for a district, which has a district emergency coordinator who's responsible for drawing all types of emergency responders together from the whole range of the institutions, local authorities, and so on, and provide and make sure it's equipped for the budget that person has, the rescue boats and the professional and trained water rescue personnel, which have to be trained in water rescue. However, what, for instance, Rescue 112 has done right across now Pakistan, but starting, if you like, in the Punjab at the core, is to extend out a training program for disaster emergency volunteers who get trained up to a certain level, not just on awareness, but also recognizing certain signs or indicators for when there are major issues, and flood warning is part of them. And then also to help coordinate as real first responders. We know that emergency services are actually mostly the second wave of responders. The first responders are always the community. To actually be able to help at least in first aid and maybe some other relatively safe practices they can do. The question is with flooding, what is safe actually for those low-level trained volunteers to actually go in and do water rescue? That's a very, very serious question. So the question then is, can you extend out drills, which are not just drills for laypersons to respond and to evacuate? Can you also have some kind of level of volunteer, trained volunteers with some skills which are, a little bit elevated from just observing and just first aid, but probably that's very difficult to do because then you have responsibilities from the authorities, from the government around safety, potentially insurance, and putting people at risk and in danger when as non-trained professionals they try to engage with water rescue, which is very dangerous indeed, and is a specialized sort of so I think these are unresolved issues which professionals are pondering. So definitely alert, awareness raising, spotting signs of getting information, having public access to information, which is flooding alerts, but also looking at water and river channels and so on, and evacuating for sure. But whether or not those community untrained volunteers or only low-level volunteers should actually actively get engaged in water rescuing is a serious question. And I think the answer at the moment probably is not. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, don't want to add too much. I think Dr. Richard has already done it. I mean, I think currently we don't have, the national governments are not, especially in developing countries, are not systematically collecting data to get the percentage that you are asking for, to study the impact of those kind of drills at a workplace and also at a community level. But what happens is that when they are promoting drills, they are promoting as part of the disaster preparedness culture. So it's much more of a subjective thing. So it stays within that concept of disaster preparedness culture. So that's all. But I think there's a long way to go, which Richard has rightly mentioned. So yeah, no definitive answers yet, but it's very subjective. It's ongoing. It's a work in progress. It will take maybe a decade for the developing countries to really catch up with some of the drills that is probably happening in Japan at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the drills one seems to, with another ex-master student who was a professional from, well, let's say, the capital city of South Korea, from the emergency services, somewhere a long-standing professional who did his master's station here at Northumbria, comparing the exercising and drills as part of that for emergency services personnel in the UK and South Korea. It appears, and we're just writing this up for submission, it appears that the way in which you do these drills and the whole culture of training and exercising, really matters. So what is it? Is it actually for drills that you pass a certain level of confidence? And so that you, or is it for public demonstration so that the authorities look good, or it's a community engagement exercise, or is it actually a part of a learning loop that you actually have exercises, drills, tabletop exercise, and you continually assess and learn and discuss in team and have open-ended critical, but not, you know, like you're not competent, you did mistake A, Y, you get your license withdrawn, discussions and challenges and learning forward in those professional teams around these exercises and drills. That's a very different culture of doing things, which is largely what happens in the UK. And of, you know, working with another ex-PhD student who's done this kind of type of research on how these teams work and how they work together and how they perceive the structure and the drills and training and who's a leader and who's not a leader and is a collaborative leadership in the UK. And that's always professionals. So what happens then if you go out to training programs for volunteers, working with professionals, and then you go out to the wider public? The dynamics change. You know, they really change. So what is a drill? What is an exercise? How do you debrief? How do you learn from that? What if mistakes get made? I can tell you off the record, although it's recorded, that let's say an airport not far from where my university is, as part of a drill, a major exercise, a multi-organization exercise, and luckily the top person didn't observe, and the top person from the relevant authority, licensing authority for the airport didn't observe, because they made a mistake. You know, school children actually made it through all the barriers, all the gateways during this sort of simulated exercise and drill. Basically, in that regard, the airport failed to keep the cordons in place. And that could have resulted formally in the license of operation for the airport being withdrawn. It's a serious mistake as part of an exercise drill. But that's not really the point. What you should then do is, how could that happen? You know, what did we do wrong, and not go about license and so on. But, you know, what can we learn? What must we learn? What's the interagency work here? What's the different teams at the airport and so on? So that really should be the goal. Not do we test for competence here. That's not what the idea, I guess, of a drill should really be, in my view and some of my colleagues' view.
Thank you, Dr. Kotter. Now, I think we are running a bit over time, but before I end the session, Denise, would you like to run the second poll?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. It was very informative, all the different sessions, but now we would like to run the poll. So I will start that in a moment. This is similar to the first poll. However, this poll will just have one question now. So it should not take too much of your time. You should be able to see it now. And based on this information, we can then see, you know, whether your confidence levels have increased from these presentations. So if you could please start voting and answering the questions. Thank you very much. Yeah, this is wonderful. Already 10 people have answered, 24% of the group here. Yeah, previously we had about 69%, so hopefully we can get a similar percentage. So I will give this another minute. Yeah, I'm seeing it slowly increase. People are doing it, so I think it just takes a bit of time before we receive your answers. thank you. We're at 45% now, so hopefully we will get a few more and then we can be able to compare the two reactions. If for some reason you're not able to actually answer the poll by the question, perhaps you can actually access the chat box. So you could provide an answer there as well if you'd like. If you'd like to do it privately, you could send us a private message as well. But the answers on the screen, they are anonymous, just so you know. Yeah, thank you. We're at 56% now, so hopefully we can get to the 69% that we were earlier.
Denise, it wasn't 69, it was 64% in the first poll. So yeah, if we could just go above 60 will be fine, I think, for comparative purpose, I think. So let's see.
That's good. Yeah, we're almost there, 58%, thank you. Okay, I think we can, end the voting now because we're at 58% and I see that there is not any more increases. So thank you very much to everyone who has voted and answered the question. Thank you very much. I will now end the poll and then we can see on the screen. Let me share the results. You should be able to see now that it looks like there has been an increase in confidence levels, which is excellent. We're very glad to hear that. For those who don't feel confident enough, you're always welcome, of course, to still send us questions now or later on as well, so we can respond later. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Denise. And now on behalf of the Center for Disaster Management and the University of Management and Technology, I would like to thank our esteemed speakers for taking out the time to share your research and your work and to contribute toward knowledge sharing during this webinar for our participants, and especially this was beneficial for our students. Some of my students were also in this webinar, and I think it was quite beneficial for them. So thank you, and I would also like to thank the Avoidable Deaths Network for helping us facilitate this event. And I hope our participants benefited from this knowledge sharing webinar, and we at CDM are hopeful for continual arrangement of more useful webinars. And thank you, goodbye, and Allah Hafiz to all.